kept feeling a tug on my heart that I really wanted to do home birth still. And I kind of told my husband, I said, like, if we make it to term, like, I really think I just want to have a home birth. Like, I want to still pursue that. Like, I know that that's not maybe something that's done, but I just want to feel like, if I could make it there, if I could be healthy, like I'd want to see if that's something that I could do and still have my home birth. And he
Yeah.
was really surprisingly supportive about it. Like I thought he'd be like, we really should just stick to going to specialists, but he was like on board. He was like, yeah, let's do this. God did this, so it's got to be in the plans. We're just gonna pray and we'll keep doing what we got to do, and we'll see where it takes us. And so I started asking questions in every birth group I was in. I joined other birth groups. Like I joined so many groups on Facebook just to go in and ask questions about, does anybody know of a midwife that's willing? I messaged so many midwives to see,
Hmm.
would you do this? And it was just no, 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 no from everywhere. And I was
Yeah.
so discouraged because I was like, I don't want to go to a hospital, but it's looking like that's going to happen. And
Yeah.
then finally somebody said, oh, I know another triplet mom and she gave birth in the same state as you earlier in the year. And so she said,
Oh.
I'll connect with her and see if she'll talk to you. And she did.
Hey, you're listening to Births at Home, the podcast, with me, Esmeralda, the home birth doula, as your host. I am a mama of three, fellow home birther, and entrepreneur. I am completely obsessed with birth, more specifically, home birth. And this is a podcast where women share their positive home birth stories, as well as the journey that led them down the path to home birth. Whether you're currently pregnant, planning a home birth with your first or fourth baby, or even just someone who is a complete birth nerd like me, this podcast is for you. So grab a cup of coffee and enjoy. Today we are on episode 17, and this is a very, very exciting episode. We are going to be hearing the story of a triplet home birth from Amber. If you follow anyone on social media that is in the birth world, especially the home birth world, I'm sure you have seen the pictures, seen the videos of this triplet home birth being shared. It has been so amazing seeing all of the positivity being shared around this birth, and now we get to chat with Amber and she gets to share her story with us today. So let's go ahead and bring Amber on. Hey, Amber, if you just want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Yes. Hi, I'm Amber. Um, and I, my husband and my husband Ken, we have a total of 8 children all together now with the triplets. And like we've been married 13 years coming up in May. So I can remember when we started having kids, first started having babies, I had thought about a home birth because I had been introduced to it through family. My mom had been a doula for like a decade and then became a nurse. And my cousins all had home births.
Mm.
So I had known that they did it. I knew that it could be done, but we didn't pursue it at that time. My husband wasn't really for it. He was really nervous. So I did have hospital births, and I remember just continuing to go back to wanting home birth because I kept having experiences that were not so great. My first baby, it was a good birth experience. With my second, I had some problems with just not getting along well with some of the nurses while in labor.
Mm.
And then having an epidural that was done incorrectly and then ultimately caused injury to me that lasted for a year. I had physical therapy.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like a great experience for me at a hospital. And I ended up having after my third, we had a surrogacy baby in between where I did a surrogate pregnancy. So I kind of had all of those hospital births, like my 3 and the surrogate baby were all hospital births. But by the time that I had given birth those 4 times, I had done it 3 times without medication. And so
Mhm.
I felt more confident than ever that like I can do a home birth, and I've done it enough times. I've not had complications. I had good pregnancies. I had good vaginal deliveries. And so
Mhm.
it was just really something I wanted to pursue. And by that time, my husband had warmed up to the idea. He'd seen me give birth enough times that he was like, I think we could do this.
Yeah.
So when we decided to have our fourth, we knew we wanted to do a home birth with him. So we pursued that, and it was totally different. It was an incredible experience for us. He was born in a birth tub in the water, and it was, oh man, it was so magical. I had my oldest son there and my little brother he's 26, but he's been at all of my births. He's
Okay.
been to every single birth and he's such a rock star. So I had
Mhm.
like a great support team because I had my mom there, I had my brother there, my husband, my son, and even like my aunt and my cousins will like video in. So
Mm.
everybody's just really supportive and encouraging, which helped. And we
Yeah.
loved it. My husband even was like so sold after that because he was like,
Mhm.
this was so different, being able to get back into our bed and sleep after. And he loved it. So he was
Mhm.
really for it after that. And then, we had our fifth, and we, in between, after having our fifth, like not long after, because she was born in November. And we moved then from Illinois to Tennessee last year in March, and
Okay.
we were talking about having our last baby because we were
Mhm.
kind of like, our older ones are kind of spaced apart. Their ages are 13, 9, 6, and then we have the 2-year-old and the 1-year-old, and then the
Mm.
triplets. So by the time we got to the fourth, we were like, if we're gonna have more kids, let's just knock it out, have them all close in age, and then be done. And
Yeah.
so we didn't really put a cap on how many kids we were gonna have. And then
Mhm.
kind of towards last year, we're like, do we just want to make this our last pregnancy and just focus on raising them and enjoying our time at that point? Because we knew we
Mhm.
wanted just one more baby. I said I could maybe deal with 2 more babies because I didn't know if I wanted to have a girl or a boy because we only had one daughter at the time. And I was like, I want her to
Okay.
have a sister, but I love my mama's boys.
Yeah.
And they're just so cuddly and different. So ultimately, God blessed us with 3, and we were really shocked. But I mean, it's exciting because I ended up with 2 girls and a boy,
Mhm.
and so my daughter has her sisters, and I got my mama's boy, and he is definitely the most attached.
Aw, I
So
love
it's
that.
good.
That's
And our
so
kids are
cute.
loving it. So I don't know if you want to hear now, probably about this pregnancy and birth. This
So
is
I do have a
a problem.
question.
Yeah,
So
of
your
course.
other home birth was then in Illinois, not in Tennessee, right?
Yes, it
Okay.
was.
Because
Mhm.
I was going to ask if you had the same midwife for those home births, but obviously if
I
you were in a
didn't.
different state, they would have been different. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, no, but I did love my home birth experience. I loved my midwife in Illinois, and we were excited to be in Tennessee. I had already kind of even before getting pregnant, I had looked around at like what midwives service the area,
Mhm.
and we just, for me, I always take supplements, whenever I'm gonna be trying to conceive. I try to take things that just help with fertility and with your lining and all of that because I have had 3 miscarriages in the past,
Mm.
and I try really hard to make sure my body is like really in an ideal environment for pregnancy.
Yeah.
So of course we had done all of that, and um, so when I was, I think about 6 or 7 weeks pregnant, I contacted the midwife I decided that I really wanted to connect with here, that is in
Mhm.
Tennessee, and met with her, and I really loved her, Talitha, and she is such an incredible woman. We really bonded immediately.
Yeah.
And so I was excited. I was excited to be doing this home birth with her. And we decided, well, let's do like a dating scan and see exactly how far along, the baby is, make sure, just everything's okay and what it looks like.
Mhm.
So I went in, I think it was like 9, almost 10 weeks pregnant for the ultrasound. And of course, we've had a lot of kids, and my
Yeah.
husband has been at almost every ultrasound, but he had some big meetings going on that day. So I took a friend with me,
Mm.
and I had been really super tired and hormonal in this pregnancy. I was napping a lot, and anyone that knows me knows I'm not a napper. I don't do it. I can't. I have too many kids. I'm always on the go,
Yeah.
and suddenly I was napping. So I think my husband was like, "I think you could be pregnant with twins. Twins do run in my family." And I was like, no, I think I'm just more tired because we have more kids now and it's harder to be
Yeah.
pregnant with this many kids and two of them being toddlers. I mean, they're
Mhm.
busy.
Yeah.
And so when I was leaving to go to my ultrasound, my friend, he said, well, two's okay, but three's not because we'll have to upgrade the van. And he was just kind of joking, and I laughed at him and kind of rolled my eyes, and I'm like, whatever, like you're crazy. So we went to this ultrasound,
Mhm.
and she's doing the regular stuff, measuring ovaries and stuff, and I wasn't paying much attention because I had at the time, my daughter who is one now, she was, still breastfeeding at the time. I was early pregnant. She was still breastfeeding. So I was on the table being scanned and feeding her on me.
Mhm.
And I'm talking to my friend because she's, here and she's like, what are they looking at? And I was talking about how they're measuring the ovaries and the different things that they can tell. And I'm like, sometimes they can even tell like where you ovulated from. Like we're just having a weird ovary conversation. But when
Yeah.
I looked back, the ultrasound tech, she just looked really pale and scared. And so, of course, at this point, I was scared because I'm
Yeah.
going, oh no, oh no, I brought my friend to this ultrasound and it's going to be something bad and something bad
Yeah.
happened. And this is such a bad thing to. So I'm trying to process that. And I was like, is everything okay? And she was like, yeah. And then she said, well, she said, it's just taking me a minute here. She said, I guess you should know why. And she turned the screen and I said, is that twins? And she was like, nope, it's three. There's triplets. And so I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. I think I was like quiet for a minute and like
Mhm.
just staring at the screen. And then I looked at my friend and I said, can you take the baby? Like, I feel like I'm going to fall, which I was on the table. So I'm thinking like, I can't fall because I'm laying, but I felt dizzy. Like I was like, I'm going to
Yeah.
fall into this bed right now, trying to
Mhm.
process this. And she was just like, like she couldn't even process that either because she's like, I can't believe I'm hearing this is happening. So we were all
Yeah.
shocked. The tech is shocked. I'm shocked. So I'm asking questions, but the tech was, I think she was so just shocked and consumed with trying to make sure she could measure things right that she couldn't answer them all. She was just like, you need to see a specialist. That was like the first thing she said is you need to see a specialist. Like you've got to
Mhm.
go to somebody who gets this stuff. And I was like, that moment when she said that, everything kind of started crashing in on me. The
Yeah.
realization that, oh my gosh, there's three. And this means higher risk. This means that maybe I miscarry, maybe they don't make it, maybe some make it and some don't. Like immediately my mind was flooded with that anxiety and fear of like, I'm gonna have to have a hospital birth. I'm
Yeah.
probably not getting out of this without having a C-section. They're going to cut me open and I've never had a C-section. Like I'm just full of this fear.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking now I've got to tell my husband how I'm going to, tell him. So
Mhm.
I was just really not happy, to be honest. Like a lot of people were like, oh, were you so excited? Were you so happy? And I was like, I was terrified. I think
Yeah.
had they told me it was twins, I would have been like, that's scary, but I could maybe make that happen. I've seen other women do it, but three, like
Mhm.
I couldn't wrap my mind around it.
Yeah.
And of course, my husband was right. We do have to upgrade. We're getting a 15 passenger that should be ready this week, hopefully. So,
Yeah.
he was right on that. And he
Mhm.
was a champion more than I was because when I called him to tell him, I was like, I couldn't wait for that, like to get home because it was an hour drive. And I was like, I don't even know if I can drive right now.
Yeah.
So I called him and I told him, and he laughed and laughed and laughed. And I was like, I don't know if you think I'm joking because of your joke, but I'm not. I'm sending you the picture. Like, this is really happening.
Yeah.
But he was really great about it. And he just was like, God believes we can do this, so we can do this. And it's a blessing. And we're going to just handle it. We've got it down now. We've got a lot of kids. We've done this enough times. So
Mhm.
I was like, but I'm just devastated because I'm like, I don't want a hospital birth. I don't want
Yeah.
to have a C-section. I don't want babies that are born early and have to do the NICU thing. I'm like, like I know people do it. I know I could do it, but I don't want to have to. Like, that's so
Mhm.
scary. This was going to be my last pregnancy. So I'm thinking, I wanted my dream home birth. I wanted to be able to
Yeah.
have this ideal thing that I had pictured, and it felt like I couldn't do that. And of course, my midwife here was wonderful. She was so kind about all of it, and she just was like, "I can't believe it." She's like, "You're so blessed. Like, what a blessing." She's like, "I can't do this birth because." Like I can't do this birth, but like
Mhm.
this is amazing. And so I was bummed, but I was like, I understand, I get it. So she was kind of looking into specialists for me at the time and trying to help me find somewhere I did feel comfortable going. I kept feeling a tug on my heart that I really wanted to do home birth still. And I kind of told my husband, I said, like, if we make it to term, like, I really think I just want to have a home birth. Like, I want to still pursue that. Like, I know that that's not maybe something that's done, but I just want to feel like, if I could make it there, if I could be healthy, like I'd want to see if that's something that I could do and still have my home birth. And he
Yeah.
was really surprisingly supportive about it. Like I thought he'd be like, we really should just stick to going to specialists, but he was like on board. He was like, yeah, let's do this. God did this, so it's got to be in the plans. We're just going to pray and we'll keep doing what we got to do and we'll see where it takes us. And so I started asking questions in every birth group I was in. I joined other birth groups. Like I joined so many groups on Facebook just to go in and ask questions about, does anybody know of a midwife that's willing? I messaged so many midwives to see,
Hmm.
would you do this? And it was just no, 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 no from everywhere. And I was
Yeah.
so discouraged because I was like, I don't want to go to a hospital, but it's looking like that's going to happen. And
Yeah.
then finally somebody said, oh, I know another triplet mom and she gave birth in the same state as you earlier in the year. And so she said,
Oh.
I'll connect with her and see if she'll talk to you. And she did. Her name's Michelle and she is just wonderful, wonderful triplet mom. She had triplet boys and they were
Oh.
just beautiful boys. And
Yeah.
so I connected with her and she had the same determination and
Hmm.
was able to connect with a team of doctors and midwives that were willing to provide care to her
Hmm.
and to do her delivery. And so she said, I'm going to see if they'll get in touch with you about it. And they were willing, so that was really awesome. We talked and we kind of all agreed that, hey, if we're going to do this, it has to be ideal. Like we have to make sure that it is the best option, that we're like being safe. And so it
Hmm.
was kind of like proceed with caution. And so
Yeah.
I nervously told my midwife here because I thought she's going to think I'm crazy. She's going to tell me no way, and
Hmm.
I told her, I was like, I think I'm going to do a home birth still. And I found some people willing to do it. And she was like, that's so cool. She was like, that's
Yeah.
amazing. She said, I've never done this. So she's like, I don't want to be like the head of it, but like, I'd love to be involved. She's like, I'll continue your care and be a part of your team. And I was like, I would love that because we just connected.
Yeah.
So she did all of my care throughout the whole pregnancy. She did, all the blood work, all of the checking every time I would go in for appointments. And it was just ideal. Like the whole time she would say like, man, your blood pressure is so perfect. You don't even have
Hmm.
any swelling. Like you're doing so good. Like you're ideal for this. Like you don't even seem like you're carrying 3 babies.
Yeah.
So it was really like cool the whole time.
Hmm.
And then at 24 weeks on Halloween, it was Halloween day, and we were going to be hosting a party, and I overdid it, decorating, cooking, and all kinds of things. And I
Yeah.
had friends over, and then I felt a gush, and I was like, oh no. So that night we ended up going to the hospital, and they said that baby A's water bag had ruptured,
Hmm.
and they had transferred me to like a bigger hospital at the time because I was like 24 weeks, so they needed a higher level NICU.
Yeah.
They thought that I was going to be in labor, and so we transferred, and they kept telling me that I needed to stay the whole pregnancy and that the babies were likely going to come within 5 days of the time that I had the rupture. They were saying if they didn't, that we would need to do a C-section at 34 weeks, and I would stay until the 34-week C-section. And oh man, I just remember being so sad about it all and feeling like this is it. But like we knew we were going to do whatever it took to be safe and to do the best. But
Yeah.
the whole time in the hospital, my blood pressure was fine. The babies were fine. The leaking slowed down and eventually stopped. They had the most wonderful readings for any testing that was done anytime they listened to them or did an ultrasound. Their growth was amazing for 3 babies. They
Yeah.
always just impressed us. And the fluid, like for having a leak, their fluids were like above some normal fluids, like some of them
Hmm.
sometimes high readings.
Yeah.
Um, and just during that time, like our faith is so important to us. And during that time, we were just praying so much, and
Hmm.
our whole church congregation was praying, and we believed the whole time that it would just heal and figure itself out, and it did. And
Wow.
so the doctors and specialists kept saying, you can't do this. You've got to have a C-section at 34 weeks. It's too
Hmm.
high risk. And I kept not believing that. And I kind of consulted with my birth team, and they said, you don't have a leak. You're healthy. The babies are healthy. Like really, if you go home and bed rest and you make it to term, like it's going to be fine.
Hmm.
And so I was like, I believe that too. And I'm ready. So I signed out against medical advice at 28 weeks and went home, and I
Yeah.
began bed rest, which luckily was easier for me because my husband gets to work from home. And so he got to be really helpful in that. So I got to just
Mhm.
completely rest, and I focused on just eating good and drinking good. And then my midwife would come and check on me constantly. And it just kind of suddenly flew by. Like I just remember like being nervous, like will I make it to 36 weeks, because that was, the mark I needed. Like if I wanted a home
Mhm.
birth, you've got to get to 36 weeks. So I kept thinking that every week, like don't do too much activity, don't get up too much. Like sometimes I'd get up a lot and I would start to contract. I'm like, no, you've got to rest because you've got to make
Mhm.
it to this mark and you might not.
Yeah.
Uh, but along the way, everything was still perfect. My tests, my blood sugars, my blood pressure, like I mean, the whole time, even she just kept saying, like, you look healthy, like you look like, a singleton pregnancy would look. There's no swelling, there's nothing,
Mhm.
which was encouraging. And then at 36 weeks, I finally got there, and it was just unbelievable. Like I remember we were so excited. We celebrated like the whole day. We were so excited. And then the midwives were like, you can come off of bed rest now because they can come. So you can start to pick up activity if you'd like. And I was like, yeah, because I've been home on bed. So I did. My mom came into town. She does travel nursing. And so she took a job in Nashville to be nearby. And so we were just doing all the things, like going to the mall, walking, cooking, just everything. And that was hard because at this point, like they were really heavy. And so
Yeah.
I remember feeling like, okay, now I can walk, but it's really hard. But I really then was ready for them to come. And then I was thinking at 37 weeks, I was like, how come they're not here yet? Like everybody said triplets come early. This whole time I've been on bed rest, and I thought I would just get up and they'd be here the next day,
Yeah.
So I was kind of surprised to get to 37 weeks. And then I had seen somebody posting about maternity shoots on Facebook. And I told my
Mhm.
husband, I said, I'm going to try to make an appointment. If I don't get into labor, we'll get some pictures, because I hadn't really thought to like do something like that. And I was like, this is kind of special. If I could get this in, let's do it. So I did. I had like a maternity photo shoot on Friday when I turned 38 weeks.
Wow.
And it was a huge celebration for us, being like, wow, this is amazing. Like we made it to 38 weeks. We're having this maternity shoot. It's amazing. The triplets are healthy. Like it was just such a proud moment.
Mhm.
And then 2 days later, I went into labor and gave birth to the babies. So oh my gosh, it was incredible at this
Mhm.
point. Like we were all ready. And when the midwives, Christine and Talitha came, they came and checked on me. And I said, well, I feel like definitely the babies have dropped. And so they said, yeah, for sure. The babies dropped. And she said, I have this theory about like how it all starts. And she said, so, if you've lost weight and then your blood pressure has gone down, you're probably going to give birth in the next 2 days. And I was like, all right. So all of that was accurate whenever we did. And so I was like, that's crazy. She's like, all right, see you back this weekend, just
Yeah.
joking. We were laughing. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So Sunday, February 4th was birthday.
Mm.
And I woke up sometime around like 1:30 in the morning. I had been up for a while before that, but I was like in denial, because I would like get up and go to the bathroom and kind of cramp and think, ugh, I just have to go to the bathroom, so I'm gonna go pee and then I won't cramp anymore. And then I'd lay back down and start to fall asleep, and then I'd cramp and think, oh man, I have to go to the bathroom again. Because at that point, like with
Mhm.
triplets, I was peeing that much, so it just made
Yeah.
sense. I had to go really bad, I was maybe contracting because of that. That would happen and then it'd go
Mhm.
away.
Yeah.
But by the time that I got up, and it was like, I think the fifth or sixth time that I like got up for this, and I was like, oh man, like I'm tired and in denial, but this is happening. So I remember
Mhm.
like I walked back to the bed and I said, to my husband, I said, hey, I think it's time. And he mumbled back. He was like, yeah, I know. Uh, he told me later he had been up, like he could hear me getting up that time. And he, as somebody who was, had me give birth so many times and he's been there for it, was like, he could tell that that was like my thing. And I was going into labor, getting up and pacing. And
Yeah.
um, so I contacted the midwives and they were like, we're on the way, it's going to be great.
Mhm.
And my mom, and she was on her way, and then I just laid in bed with my husband and we just like labored there. I just fell asleep a lot. So like I
Mhm.
would have contractions and I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up and have more, and that's been like a lot of my births. I really do tend to rest a lot in the first part of it and then have the energy for the next part.
Yeah.
So I focus a lot on resting, especially if I'm waking up at 1 in the morning and I'm like really tired already. Cause I'm like, I know I'm gonna have to push at some point.
Mhm.
So it was really nice that everybody got there. The babies were doing great. Baby A was head down and we were all just there and ready. And for a long time, I laid in bed. I had my 13-year-old son next to me holding my hand. My husband laid with me. My mom was right there breathing with me. And it was just peaceful. And I kept falling asleep. I remember I would sleep, have a contraction, sleep. And I felt really good about that because I was so tired. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, I wasn't hearing this because I was sleeping, but the midwives were like kind of saying we should probably see if she'll do stairs or something and get going now. And so
Mhm.
my husband's like, all right, I'll go talk to her. So he came over and was like, hey, you want to go do stairs with me? And I woke up and I was like, it's bright outside. It's morning. Yeah, I guess I'm ready. So, and it was,
Mhm.
I think around 7 in the morning at that point.
Mhm.
And I got up and, so we walked a little and I got into like a robe and I said, I got to go to the bathroom before we're doing stairs. So I went to the bathroom and sitting there, I was like, I think it's time to push. Get me back to the bed because I wanted to be at the bed. I wanted to be able to squat and kind of use the bed to support myself. So I went back and I did that because I was like, I knew that's what, like I had squatted to give birth to my other home birth baby. And so I was like, I know that position worked and helped. So I went and I did that. And I was like, nothing happened and kind of it stalled my contractions and my need to
Mhm.
push. So I was like, this is weird. So like I stood back up and suddenly like I could feel her descending and I could feel that urge. And it was like, it was such a weird feeling in comparison to my other births because it
Yeah.
felt like I didn't realize at the time, but like I was guessing she was still in her sack because it felt like a heavy water balloon, but it
Mhm.
wasn't like a difficulty. Like I was standing straight up, and then my mom, who was catching the babies, she got to catch them, which was wonderful. And I told her, I said, okay, I said, she's coming now. And I just squatted down, and then sure enough, she just like descended so beautifully.
Wow.
And I mean, it was incredible. My mom had never even seen a baby in the sack before like that. So
Mhm.
she said she was looking at it and thinking, like, what is that like coming out? And then she's like, she realized the water bags were still there. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna get like what now? Because that's good.
Yeah.
And as soon as she came out, it burst and it was just beautiful and wonderful. She came
Mhm.
out happy and vocal. And I loved it. We got to love on her and check on her and breastfeed her, which would bring on more contractions. So I'd pass her back and forth. Like I'd pass her over to my husband, have some contractions, take her back and breastfeed a little bit. And we
Mhm.
just relax. We had good music going. I had a playlist going of good worship music. And I prepare a lot mentally. So like I kept a really good mental space. And
Yeah.
anytime that I felt like, oh man, like I don't know if I can do this, I would just be like, can you guys pray for me? And so my mom and husband would pray. And then about an hour later, it was time for B.
Mhm.
And it was kind of the same thing. I kept trying, like I tried to like rock on the ball. I had tried squatting and it wasn't working. So I was like, okay, with A, I stood up. Maybe my body is just doing that this time. So I did. I stood up to also birth baby B and she descended the same way. But when she got to the bottom, I did push. Like with A, I didn't have to push at all. She just kind of
Yeah.
fell out. With B, I did push a little, if you could even call that. It wasn't tough, but I remember thinking, maybe she's breech, but I could tell she was in the sack too, and she was butt first, but she was in the sack, and
Mhm.
it was just such a cool experience. Though my mom got to catch them both, and
Yeah.
then we laid in bed because by the time I pushed out the second, I was getting tired, and I was like, okay, I just need to like lay and rest. So we were
Mhm.
feeding her and just staring at both the babies, just so excited, just kind of chatting. It was a good like in between with like no contractions happening.
Mhm.
Um, and we're just waiting. And so I know that Christine had told me at some point during this, she said, okay, well, now we're going to check and we're going to keep listening to see. And what he should be doing soon is trying to find a way to turn, whether he's turning feet first or head first. He should be turning now to find where he's going, and that can take a minute. And she
Yeah.
said, so we'll wait, we'll keep an eye. And she said, but if something happens, if there's, something wrong with his heart, placenta, anything before that, like, I may have to go in and get him out. And she explained what that would be like. And I said, listen, I said, if it comes to my baby and my baby's safety, I'll do whatever you need me to do. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You do what you got to do in the moment. I will do it.
Mhm.
So sure enough, like after a while, they were listening to him and stuff, and I felt the burst of the water bag. And I said, "Oh, my water just burst." And so she came over and looked and she said, "There's a lot of blood in it." And she said,
Mm,
there's enough blood, I think that, so they were already listening and trying to check. And they said, "Yeah, his heart's dipping." They
mm.
had some dips. And so she's like, "I'm gonna go in and get him." And I was like, "Okay," just trying to like mentally prepare for that a little bit. But
Yeah.
it was weird. It was definitely weird when she did it, but I wouldn't say it was like as painful as I expected either. Like everybody wants to know, that was it really painful? And honestly, it wasn't as painful as like my second birth. My second born son, he was born 2 weeks late, and I'm pretty sure his head was fully formed because I mean, he was massive to push out.
Mhm.
And I remember like that being my most painful birth experience. And I was like, this wasn't even as painful as that. So,
Okay.
and I think at the end when she like, right when she had him almost out and like had to turn him at some point, I was like, that hurt a little, but no
Mhm.
more than like a head coming out would. But I was just really grateful because I remember like I wasn't even afraid like in the moment. I remember afterwards my husband said that he was like a little bit of, like afraid, and he was praying and nervous. And I was like, I just wasn't, because I just trusted the midwives. I knew that they knew what to do. I knew that she had already prepared me for the scenario. So I
Yeah.
was like, she's gonna get the baby out and we're gonna be fine. And I
Mhm.
just, I believed that and knew that. And I think like in the video at some point she had said like, "Oh, stand by to resuscitate," and they pulled him out and she's like, "Wait, never mind, he's fine." He's
Uh-huh.
vocal, everything's great. And we were just like,
Yeah.
that went as perfect as you could expect. Like for a
Mhm.
situation that is considered an emergency situation, where in the hospital they would have done a C-section, that instead was done so beautifully. Like it was
Yeah.
just, and we were grateful, so grateful that they just knew what they were doing and had that experience. It was so joyous after, like, I think the whole room was just full of tears, and we definitely had a full house. I had friends here, I had families here, we had the whole
Mhm.
birth team. Um, it was so amazing. And so afterwards, we were all just crying, hugging, loving on
Mhm.
babies. And then like my mom had made a huge pot of my favorite soup, which is like like a cream of mushroom soup with
Okay.
tons of mushrooms, and everybody feasted. We all feasted on mushroom soup and loved on babies, and then everyone went to rest. And I just remember feeling like I was on cloud nine, because I was like,
Mhm.
I can't believe that we made it to 38 weeks with 3 babies and then
Yeah.
had this incredible birth experience
Mhm.
at home. Like that is so amazing when so many women don't even have the option to have like a home birth, in some states even with a singleton, and in others with twins. And there's not as many options, and I just believe that women need more options and should have more options, whether that's hospital or not. I think that being able to birth the way you feel comfortable is really important, and
Mhm.
it changes the whole experience. And this was definitely my favorite birth experience. It was
Yeah.
really amazing. And I felt
Yeah.
great after. I've been really back to normal. We've been going to church since they were about 3 weeks old. We've been
Mhm.
back in the swing of that. We got them out to like a Costco trip and put them all in a wagon, and everybody loves to stop and see them and talk about them.
Mhm.
Our kindergartner had his first ever field trip yesterday, and we took the triplets and went with him, and it was awesome. We just had a great time. So they've been getting out. Everybody's, holding them, loving on them. It's just been really great. Like I love like where we live too. Our local community is just so tight knit, and
Mhm.
everywhere we go, our kids are just loved on. So we've loved it, and we've adjusted better than I expected to with triplets.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're tired for sure, but it's really been wonderful.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
everything I could have ever hoped for.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing. I love that it all just kind of fell into place for you because you knew,
Mhm.
like, it feels like you kind of knew from the beginning, deep down inside, what you really wanted and what you kind of pictured your whole birth to look like. And so the fact that everything just fell into place, how the pregnancy was like perfect and spot on, everything, nothing ever went wrong. And even whenever you did have kind of that little scare, it was still like the babies were healthy, the babies were fine, you
Oh,
were fine, there was
didn't even
nothing
know
really
anything
wrong.
perfect.
Yeah. So it's amazing just how everything worked out for you and you were able to have like this beautiful triplet birth because even in the hospital, it's unheard of to have like a vaginal triplet birth. I don't think I've ever heard anyone have one.
And I
Uh,
was told that when I was in the hospital. They said that because they said they would do a C-section at 34 weeks. And I said, well, if I stay in the hospital for my whole bed rest, I'd still like to try to get to 36 weeks and do a vaginal delivery. And he's like, they won't do it. I don't know any
Yeah.
doctors that are going to do that. And I said, well, are you guys trained in breech delivery? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I, I don't have to have a C-section if I don't want one,
Hmm.
right? Like so in my mind, I was like preparing, like, if I'm going to be at the hospital, I'm going to fight for still having a, vaginal delivery. Cause I was so
Hmm.
determined that like, I can have a say in this, like,
Yeah.
because if I was in the hospital and I wanted to have a vaginal delivery, they could do a C-section if there was a need or an emergency and we're already there.
Hmm.
But I think there should be an option to try because it
Yeah.
can be done and it has been done. And I'm not the first one and hopefully not the last one.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. I think in the medical system, there's just so much fear. Everything is fear based, and they
mhm,
just are way too scared to even try doing it that they don't even make
mhm,
it an option.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's so amazing. I absolutely love it. All of it. It was a great story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Of course, I've been really loving that it's out there and that people are loving it as much as they are. I really
Hmm.
just wanted people to see that home birth could be so beautiful. And even with multiples, you can have a great experience. That's not, it's not something I ever thought would happen when I first found out I was having triplets. I
Hmm.
never believed it could at first either.
Yeah.
It's just been incredible. And I'm really happy that it happened. And it was a great, like, last pregnancy experience for us. So,
Hmm.
the best way to do it. But I definitely believe that more people would probably be willing to do it if they had the support that I had. I really
Hmm.
have had such support in my life from friends and family and our community and people that like everybody around me was so supportive. Even just our friends and people that we would talk to at church would be like, I think this is incredible, that you're
Yeah.
doing this. Nobody was like, you shouldn't do that or that's crazy. But I've heard
Yeah.
about people even having home births with one baby and they say that their family is really discouraging. So
Hmm.
I think that it helped me that I had that because everybody kept telling me the whole time, you can do this. You're built for this. You've got this. You're healthy. And I just believed that. I really kept believing it the whole time that it could happen and I could stay healthy.
Yeah, definitely. A support system is like super, super important for any home birth because it is
Mhm.
really discouraged.
Mhm.
Um, Even for singletons, which is crazy to me, but yeah,
Yeah.
a support system is very needed. And you had said at the beginning, I think, that you had joined like a bunch of Facebook groups and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Were there
Mhm.
any Facebook groups that you would suggest to someone who is having multiples and planning a home birth?
Yeah, the group that I found the most helpful as far as support during my pregnancy is called Birthing Multiples Naturally.
Okay.
And so in this group, it's just wonderful women. And the idea and concept is just women that want to be able to have vaginal delivery, whether that's in a hospital environment or a home environment. The whole goal is that people are trying to have their multiples vaginal if they're able to. And not all
Mhm.
are able to. Some of them, they come into the group and they're like, we tried, we didn't make it. Everybody's still just so supportive. Everybody's so supportive. And we, all kind of had this realization that, there is always risk, whether you're having a singleton or multiples, it's higher with multiples.
Mhm.
So everyone kind of knew like this was the goal, but it might not happen. But so many people are doing it and have done it. And that group was so encouraging just to hear other women's stories. And
Yeah.
because I think there were a couple of other triplet moms in there that I read stories
Mhm.
about that did have home births. So that was really exciting for me. And it was beneficial.
Yeah, I'll definitely go ahead and link that below. That way, if anybody is planning like a home birth with multiples, they could go to that group because that sounds like it was a good resource for you.
It is, and you can kind of
Yeah.
tell what is and isn't normal more from that group because, like, when you have multiples, it's so different. Some things would happen, I'd be like, "Is this normal?" Because it's a multiple pregnancy. Like, it was
Hmm.
so good to just have that resource of other moms and just the encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is there anything else that you feel like we should touch on or that you missed or that you just want to say to anybody?
I'm just glad that it's out there. My whole goal with all of it was just to advocate for being able to have the birth you want to, hospital or
Hmm.
not. This was what I chose. And I wanted people to see that if that's the route they want to take, it can happen. And I want people to have hope and know that, even breech birth can be done. Not only did I have multiples at home, but I had, breech delivery and it just went so good. So it's like, I think there's so much fear out there about what birth's going to be like, but there are amazing midwives out there that have more experience than a lot of the doctors out there that have been doing it a lot longer, and just trusting that. I trusted them the entire way, and I
Mhm,
did anything they thought I should. And I just think that that was a huge part of it. Midwives are awesome. Trust the midwife, and
mhm.
I hope more people fight for home birth, because I know that in some states they're fighting for those rights, and that is a right that we should continue to have. Women should
Yeah,
have the right to be able to choose home birth if they want to. So
yeah,
that's my hope with this.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much again for coming on and just sharing everything with us. It was great.
Thank you very much. It was. Thank you.
Wow, how absolutely amazing was that? A triplet home birth is almost unheard of, which is so unfortunate. Especially, like she said, there are other women who have done it, but they're just more scared to share their story because they don't want to hear any backlash or just have negative comments sent their way. And that is really unfortunate because then it just discourages other mothers who are planning to birth multiples naturally and at home. And it makes them believe that they can't do it because they haven't heard of anyone else do it. So if you are planning a home birth with multiples, definitely know that it can be done and it's just another variation of normal. If you're healthy and the babies are healthy, there's no reason why you can't have a home birth. Definitely just find a great support system who knows what they're doing and trusts birth and puts trust in you that you can do it and you can have your home birth. If you are currently planning and preparing for a home birth, then let me tell you about the Home Birth Hub. It is a membership, and when you join, you gain access to live educational workshops, Q&A sessions, birth and mother circles, private community chats, my entire resource library, and so much more. To become a member, click the link down in the show notes and join us over at the Home Birth Hub. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love if you would share with any family or friends who may also benefit from these stories. Also, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review to help others find this podcast. Tune in next week for another amazing home birth story. Bye.